planners see possibility everywhere. The new homes in surprising spots. The green spaces in cut-off places. The transit plans in traffic jams. Solutions where you'd least expect. Seeing what can be in what is takes vision, data-driven discipline, and expertise. It takes a collaborative spirit to ensure a community's needs and potential are met. It takes supporting decision makers with inspiration and insight so they can enact real change. It takes a planner.
Good afternoon, friends. How are you today? Ooh, that is not bad. How are you today? Perfect. Thank you for joining us today for this important conversation on the future of Cleveland's lakefront, thus the locale today, and the central role that planners play in leading profound change for this city and the region. My name is Eric Hulkran from Cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer, and we are honored to welcome today's state senators, state representatives, mayors, council members, planners, and other key stakeholders of our region to this conversation. Today, what we're going to do is explore the plans of the city of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County working to physically, socially, and economically reconnect Cleveland's North Coast to all the community members and transform Clevelanders' relationship with one of the region's greatest assets. The current momentum around this project has created a historic opportunity for the city to move forward and take advantage of the incredible resource the Lakeshore provides. Stephen Litt, columnist for Cleveland.com and The Plain Dealer, award-winning journalist who also happens to hold a master's degree in urban planning and development. He will guide us through the Lakefront project illustration as we understand the role planners play in turning the vision into the reality. Our first conversation is very special. It's a rare opportunity to hear the top two elected officials enacting change to Cleveland and Cuyahoga County's lakefront at a historic moment of broad civic alignment. First off, our 58th mayor of Cleveland, Justin M. Bibb. Mayor Bibb is working, yes. How are you, sir? Have a seat. Mayor Bibb is working tirelessly to improve public safety, invest in neighborhoods, and modernize City Hall. Took office on January 3rd of 2022 as the city's first millennial mayor. His vision for Cleveland is to become a national model for city management, police reform, and neighborhood revitalization. Joining the conversation is Cuyahoga County Executive Chris Ronayne. He took office this year on January 1st with a vision for a healthy Cuyahoga County with safe communities, good jobs, a fair justice system, and excellent services. He began his career in public service in 1996 with the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission, where he developed community reinvestment plans with municipalities across Cuyahoga County. He became planning director for the city of Cleveland in 2002, where he was the chief architect for the Cleveland Lakeshore Plan. Gentlemen, welcome. Stephen, the floor is yours.
Can everyone hear me? Great. Well, I want to say thanks to Advance Ohio and the American Planning Association for bringing us all together here. It is so exciting to see all of you. I see hundreds of stories in this room, and when you're ready to talk about them, you have my contact information, so I'm waiting. Okay. I think everyone in this room understands the history of how difficult it has been to connect downtown Cleveland to the lakefront. We have two gentlemen here who are working hard to address that. So first thing I want to do is ask, why do you guys think this problem has been so hard to solve?
Well, thank you everyone for allowing us to have this fireside chat about a project that's near and dear to my heart and the county executives as well too. Historically, Cleveland has been a city where good lakefront plans go to die. We have been talking about this for nearly a century, but I believe in this moment, particularly coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, where every downtown across the country is trying to figure out what's going to be their unique value proposition to have a vibrant urban core. Cleveland is so unique in the sense that not only do we have a world-class opportunity with our lakefront, but also our riverfront. We are truly a two-waterfront city. And so I think the moment speaks to the momentum we have right now in terms of our lakefront development efforts. I think secondly, for the first time in nearly a generation, you have a mayor and a county executive fully aligned on the same page. And Chris and I both agree that this is all about how do we grow the pie together versus managing a shrinking pie and getting a get to yes attitude in terms of how we're moving our city and county forward. And then thirdly, this is about equity. You know, our lakefront belongs to everybody. I don't care if you live in Edgewater or in Collinwood or in Glenville. It belongs to everyone. And one of the things that, you know, I reflected on before today's conversation was, you know, when I was running for mayor, it was a lot of conversation in the community about, you know, the lakefront being the dividing line, black, white, east side versus west side. I think if we can finally see real progress and real development on the lakefront, it will speak to the racial healing of our city long term as well, too.
Great. Chris?
Well, Steve, first of all, I want to kind of approach it from what is happening. We at the county, if you look at the county lake line from Euclid to Bay Village, a lot is happening. I mean, seeing people that are doing things right now, Mayor Gale, Council President Mancuso, your council, all of you guys, the planning team in Euclid, it's extraordinary what's happened right down to the lakefront in the lakefront city of Euclid. You know, looking over, I see Mayor Bopes, what you're doing at Bradford's Landing, what Mayor Kumar is doing to connect the center of Bay Village down to the waterfront. Kudos to all of you, just to name three. I will say, as a resident of Cleveland, proud resident, and my mayor sitting next to me, Cleveland's challenges, in fairness to Cleveland, are a little more pronounced as it relates to the beast between us. You know, they bear the burden of the downtown Shoreway and the downtown Innerbelt. I'm seeing Matt Zone. We got over that in Detroit Shore when you were councilman to make Battery Park happen. And yet what Mayor Bibb is dealing with is Interstate 90, right? But, you know, he's finding a path. I saw Councilman Hairston out here. You guys, through the Metro Parks, are getting it done. We're going to finally see from 9th Street all the way out to Collinwood some real lakefront progress, which speaks to the equity, because it can't always have been a west side thing. I think it's really, really good to see east and west find the waterfront. But kudos to, again, along the county line, what the communities have done who haven't admittedly dealt as much with that beast on the waterfront as others, but you're getting pathways to the waterfront, which is enhancing the value proposition of Cuyahoga County. You know, our tax base, our quality of life for our residents, you're giving people a reason to want to be here and a reason to want to stay.
So, thank you. Just to underscore something you just said, Chris, the regional benefit of our transportation system, so automobile focused, imposes huge costs on the city of Cleveland, and that, I think that answers part of the reason why this has been such a difficult problem. But let me talk a little bit about the past and maybe why some of these things didn't come forward and where Cleveland has been a place where lakefront plans went to die. Planning on the lakefront used to be a very top-down thing. You guys might remember that the Cleveland Tomorrow Lakefront Vision of 1998, this was a steering committee of 20 people appointed by Mike White, then the mayor, and all of the meetings were closed to the public and the press. The upshot of all of that was that nothing happened. Lots of pretty pictures we saw. We ran some of those in the newspaper. Chris, when you were planning director in 2002 to 2004, working on the waterfront district plan, I remember you scheduled dozens of public meetings, and I remember attending some of those in sweaty rec center gymnasia. Remember? And, right. And does public engagement and planning give the final results greater legitimacy and a greater chance to earn political support, and then beyond that, get the money? Yeah. Public engagement. Chris?
I mean, we were lucky to be overseeing the waterfront district plan from 2002 to 2005, and Debbie Berry's out here somewhere that managed that plan. Over 300 public meetings, Mayor. We left a log of over 5,000 public comments. I was joking with Councilman Zone on the way in that there was a competition between council members, Zone with Sagrada Familia Church and Simperman with Slovenian Hall, and between the two of you probably brought out 2,000 residents. We had 5,000 people show up, no shortage of ideas from citizens. But that is what's so important. The Chicago waterfront plan when after the fire, Burnham, our Burnham as well, who probably the best planning that happened was under Burnham in this town, but in Chicago, they went on to teach the Chicago Lakefront plan in the Chicago public schools. So the kids became the stewards. That's what I'm trying to do with the Freshwater Institute, is teach about, first of all, water ecology to get to water economy, but the planning in between. Let the kids be the future and our residents be the stewards of their own domain and their destiny on the lake. So yeah, public input matters.
I've got a little spin on this for you, Mayor. Just 2 days from now at 3 p.m., you're going to stand in front of an audience right over there, the Great Lakes Science Center, and unveil the first iteration of ideas for a new plan for the downtown lakefront. But I believe you see this as an iteration, not a take it or leave it rollout. You want public feedback to continue. And is that because you think this is going to build the political legitimacy? Hey, we've got flights coming by.
Where's Chris Quinn? He said, get rid of the airport.
That's right. And help you find the money to do this.
Yeah, our team, in collaboration with GCP and our administration, we were really keen on making sure that we co-created this master plan with our residents. I truly believe that change certainly comes from the bottom up, not the top down. And it is so important that, the black fisherman from the east side who's been at the Inner City Yacht Club for generations, that he sees himself in our lakefront master plan. I want that transplant who's left their job at Goldman Sachs in New York to come to Cleveland to work at Key to see himself in that master plan. And I want our young people at CMSD to see themselves in our master plan. And I think the early plan we'll release later this week will be a good symbol of us really grounding this master plan in the lived experiences of all of our residents and all our key stakeholders, because that's so essential for us to get buy-in. If the residents feel like this is another civic plan that was created in the dodgy boardroom at the Union Club, nothing will get done, and nothing won't change. And we're really excited about the unveiling of this plan over the next couple of days.
Yeah, I wanted to follow on that. Could you tell us what it was like for you growing up on the east side of Cleveland, and what did the lake mean to you when you were a boy?
Well, as a working class black kid growing up on 121st and Dove, I didn't go to the West Side Market till I was a junior in high school, when I did look up to Cleveland. I didn't get my first real lakefront experience until I was in high school, and my dad would take me to the air show because we didn't know that this asset, these places, were for us. I remember as a kid, my dad told me not to go to Little Italy.
Yeah.
Right? And so we as a city, we're still dealing with some of the remnants of historical segregation and racism in our community. And you look at the highway that was built right here. It was literally the government saying, this is not for you. Stay in your place. And so if we can really make our lakefront master plan effort a way to break down those both structural and symbolic barriers, I think you not only see a lot of healing, but a lack, an enhanced sense of trust, sense of confidence, but also a sense of hope that as we rebuild the new Cleveland coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, all of our residents will feel like they belong in our great city.
The government was us, though, at that point.
Yeah.
And City of Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, the federal government, all involved in building this concrete wall between us and the lakefront that you guys now want to fix. Chris, you mentioned Daniel Burnham, the planner of our group plan district and the Chicago lakefront plan that you mentioned. He was the guy who said, make no little plans. But sometimes planners are ridiculed for thinking big. And you came in for some hits when you were working on the 2004 lakefront plan from our columnist, Dick Fegler of blessed memory.
I still love him.
So I have to read this quote. He said that watching you working on this plan reminded him of all the failed visions from the 1960s and 70s, which we wrote about in The Plain Dealer. We loved all those pretty renderings, too, back then. We still love them today. Let's make them real. Anyhow, he said, and I quote, "Our newspaper, with mere ink and press releases, created an emerald city so wonderful that had Judy Garland seen it, she never would have given Kansas another thought." But of course, none of it came true. And it was in that context that he lambasted your idea, which came out of the Lakefront Plan, working with Smith Group JJR, to use dredged sediment from the Cuyahoga River, and I think you all know where I'm headed with this, to create an island offshore that would shelter the shoreline from the northwest prevailing winds. And he called it Ronayne's Island. You remember that?
They actually parodied me to a Gilligan's Island tune. Yeah.
So now, Cleveland Metro Parks has raised $6 million to complete a buildable plan to create exactly such an island on the east side in a project called Cheers. Are you feeling vindicated?
Cheers to that. Yeah, I mean, you have to, in Burnham's words, you cannot make small plans. You got to think big. I don't blame Dick Fagler for an ounce of cynicism on that, but I would say, we were looking outside our city and looking to other cities like Milwaukee, which I was back in last weekend. They did it. They did exactly that with the island. Toronto's done it. We're about to do it, just 15, 20 years deferred with some new leadership. And cheers to that, pun intended. But I would say, you have to. Dick Clough's out here. I appreciate what you've talked about with the land bridge is a big, big, bold idea.
Let's say who Dick Clough is.
Well, I know him as the guy with the land bridge idea.
Dick Clough is the head of the Green Ribbon Coalition, a volunteer organization that first came forward with the idea of the land bridge, which I think inspired some of the things that we're seeing today.
And thank you, kudos. It is the citizen idea that is the kernel of the idea that actually I think launches public sector advances. And so I'll say back to the Fagler, they didn't like the island, but yes, we built it in other cities that went on to do it, and we're about to do it in ours. I do feel good about that as long as it took us to get here. But what I will say also is what Mayor Daley said to me, I've said it many times, had a walk down East 9th Street with him here one day, and he said, cities are about big picture and small details, and that's the big picture Mayor Bibb is doing right now with the Harborfront plan. But some of the small details we worked on against the grain of, I got a lot of calls of frustration from folks who worked over at the Justice Center when we returned Mall C to a park. We made, with Detroit Shoreway, the connections happen. Matt, I remember cutting the ribbon on the first bikeway connector, and that launched a neighborhood revitalization at Battery Park that I think could happen at South Gordon Park, south of the tracks toward St. Clair. There's an opportunity in the waiting there with that connection. But it's the little things that actually added up. This bridge right out here, I remember going to see Stephen Latourette and Stephanie Tubbs-Jones, and they earmarked the money for it. It matters. So it's not just the big plan, but it's the little things that matter. The reason I made the comment about Burnham's best work and the best planning work was, frankly, he was planning a city really that hadn't been taken over by the automobile. And the only thing unfinished was the eventual rail station, which I hope we do with the Amtrak station, to really finish the Burnham plan. But he was thinking through the lens of people and how they move, not how they move through cars. The worst planning was done under Burt Porter when everything was thought through as how it affected the automobile, when he wanted to knock down the Guardians on the Lorraine Carnegie Bridge, and when he wanted to throw that highway through what he called the two-bit duck pond in Shaker.
Albert Porter, the former Cuyahoga County engineer during the early highway era, as we all remember. I have counted and tried to put a spreadsheet together, keeping track of everything that's going on our waterfronts now. Do you guys want to guess how many individual planning projects are underway right now? Yeah, close to 30.
Yeah, hopefully a couple.
Okay, close to 30 from Euclid over to the west side of Cuyahoga County, and here on the downtown lakefront and going up the Cuyahoga River. A great deal of that planning is being led by the public sector, but private sector engagement is also happening. On the riverfront and the lakefront, we now have two major sports team owners, Dan Gilbert of the Cavaliers Jimmy and Dee Haslam of the Browns, who have stimulated the debate over waterfronts with exciting computer-generated plans, hopefully not the Dorothy and Oz variety. And these, underlying these visions, which have, I think, pushed the debate forward, is the idea that encouraging public investment in infrastructure and public space is the way to leverage private investment. But there's risk involved, because if government is front-ending all of this major spending on infrastructure, hundreds of millions of dollars probably, we don't know yet, what's the payoff going to be? Dan Gilbert's Bedrock is planning for 3.5 million square feet on the riverfront. And I know that the plans for the roadway system here and the lakefront are premised on the notion that almost 1 million square feet of new space could be built here on the downtown lakefront. 4.5 million square feet is the equivalent of 3 new key towers. Does that kind of demand exist in Cleveland? If that takes place over 20 years, that's 225,000 square feet in downtown every year for 20 years. Is there enough demand for that?
I don't know about you, and I would say this even if I weren't the mayor, but bet long on Cleveland. Bet long on Cleveland, bet long Cuyahoga County. There are a couple trends that I really speak to our competitive advantage right now. Number one, we have a strong legacy in history and strength in advanced manufacturing. And with President Biden's new industrial policy, we are making things in America again and making things in Ohio again, too. Number two, we just did a ribbon cutting a couple months ago for the first non-Department of Defense quantum computer right here in Cleveland at the Cleveland Clinic. We can be a leader in healthcare AI to really change how the healthcare sector is thinking about. And then thirdly, water is the new oil. We were just talking about all the climate refugees who might be looking at Ohio now because of the heat islands in Phoenix and in California, all the hurricanes and tornadoes in Miami. This is our time. And so we have to plan for growth in the future and show the private sector and the marketplace that we're going to build things. We want to be a magnet for new talent and new investment. And by hedging and ensuring that we as the public sector are making the right strategic focus investments on public infrastructure, we will start to spur, I believe, in my opinion, that long-term investment to our city and our region as well.
Chris, is this the key to population growth?
Absolutely.
Connecting with the lakefront.
There is the truism that what we have that others don't have is the waterfronts, right? And that's a truism in major metros, but particularly in Ohio. If the Hopewell Mounds weren't being nominated as a UNESCO site, I would nominate the Cuyahoga River. It's where everything occurred in industrial America. The canal that was planned just offshoot from it was Washington and Jefferson Street. I mean, it goes back that far, and then Rockefeller figured out how to make a go of it. It was the fulcrum of the Industrial Revolution, and then the fulcrum of the environmental restoration, thanks to Carl Stokes and Lou Stokes. Everything is here. Yeah, give them a shout. Those guys deserve a lot more credit than they get advancing the EPA and the Clean Water Act. But, Steve, we had a hiccup. And I appreciate Advance and APA sponsoring today's event, hosting today's event. We had a hiccup when others didn't. And it comes down to leadership. I mean, the new leadership of Mayor Bibb. I see Council President Griffin in the back. Our team, many of our county council members are here. Thank you, Councilwoman Turner and Conwell and Miller that are here. We've got some big bets we have to make, but it's got to be a public-private nonprofit partnership. They did it in Pittsburgh. They lost their steel industry, but they figured out how to reclaim the 3 rivers and make a go of it. And now, as my counterpart, Rich Fitzgerald, said to me, what made the riverfront happen and really get a vibe there? He said it was Carnegie Mellon. He said because Carnegie Mellon attracted the tech jobs that attracted the market, the housing market down on the river. Cincinnati, same thing. Public-private partnership that crossed literally down to the river. Columbus, the same thing. Michael Coleman, the county commissioners, and the partnership with everybody that was around the Olentangy and the Scioto. They made stuff happen. It's our time with this leadership and the partnership, Beju's out here, to make it happen. I agree with Mayor Bibb about the river. The river, I think we both like the bedrock plan, but I'm going to say to my own county council, a challenge. Today, we issued an RFP for new courthouse space. As we move the jail, as crazy as this domino logic sounds, as we move the jail, so moves the opportunity for the courthouse. I've talked to the mayor about it. I appreciate you, Mayor, and your willingness to listen. But as we move those courthouses, that's 500,000 potential square feet of office space to utilize to kickstart a development where could be 9th Street, could be the riverfront, could be the lakefront. What if we used a public-private partnership to get something done? It's where we hiccup for 20 years and where we gotta catch up. We're next.
Chris, thank you for giving us some news today, revealing a little bit of a coordinated vision that we'll see more about on Thursday, perhaps. Since the two of you were talking about the future and growing population, in part by reconnecting to our lakefront, do you want to say a few words about bills that are in front of our state legislature now that threaten bodily autonomy for women and to degrade our higher education system, which could suppress that desire to move to a place like Ohio? Just quickly.
Yeah, well, this is something that I talk to my counterparts across the state about at least a couple times a week. You know, we have to continue to remind our lawmakers in Columbus that Ohio's big three cities are responsible for nearly 80% of our GDP. We are the backbone and the engine of our economic competitiveness as a state, and I'm really happy to have a lot of great relationships down in Columbus. I'm in Columbus a lot, making sure we get our fair share of resources here in Cleveland. But it's so important that we have common sense legislation, from gun reform to making sure a woman has a right to choose in this state, to making sure we have the ability as mayors to have the tools we need to keep our cities safe and grow our economies. Mayors know what we need to get done. And it's so important that we continue to have a good relationship with our delegation down in Columbus, who understand what Northeast Ohio needs long term.
Great, Chris.
Yeah, and I think Advance has been a really helpful partner on these issues. I want to say it's great to have President Laura Bloomberg here today from Cleveland State and Bride Rose Sweeney here from the state legislature, just people I see, but hugely important in these discussions. We cannot create an Ohio where my 15-year-old daughter doesn't want to come back to after college. We cannot have it. She does like your city mayor because he can relate, and he spoke lacrosse to her one day. She was so impressed. But the reality is what brings Audrey home after college, just using one example? And is it a state that says no to your choices? Is it a state that has not yet figured out that we need to be a state of internationalism, that we need to be cities that are about international? It's going to get really hotly contested on the Senate debates as you see it unfold. We need to be the city like Toronto that welcomes people from everywhere. So whether it's matters of choice, whether it's matters of higher education that lets teachers actually teach and lets students actually think. The best thing my daughter said to me the other day when I asked her about what she learned in world history last semester, she said, "Everything you didn't, Dad." I love that. More of that.
Great.
Make it an international city, too.
Great, Chris. Last week, County Council rebuffed the first attempt by your administration to win support for the county participating in the creation of the North Coast Development Corporation, which is a city initiative to move towards creating a full-fledged development authority with the capacity to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to finally get things done on this lakefront. You want the county involved. You kind of hit a roadblock last week. How are you going to get around that? And will Mayor Bibb's presentation on Thursday, where we begin to see some of the vision, is that going to help you?
I think that it will. I appreciate our council colleagues that I mentioned that are here today, and directors Dever, Hertig, and Serby are planning and development and public works. You guys are helping already majorly on the Cleveland waterfront with all the communities mentioned, and particularly Cleveland, obviously. We want to be at the table. We own some of the malls. We own the Justice Center complex, which is going to be a new opportunity for Cleveland as things sort themselves out and we migrate offices and facilities to other places. I'm just looking at it through the window thinking, that's next. I mean, that's your downtown play. We want to be at the table. Mayor and I talk a lot about RTA, the port. You know, it's good to see the sewer district here today, Kyle, and your team. But we share board members. You know, I think you put people on boards that I might have otherwise put, you mentioned people to me, and it's the same thing with the Waterfront Authority and the North Coast Development Corp. Seeing Dave Gilbert here, he lived this in a whole nother era, but David, it kind of stopped after you left, and this was the last legacy of it. It's got to start again, and I know the mayor's committed to it. So the county wants to be at the table, be a partner supporter. We'll find a path with council.
Yeah, and I wanted
Please.
to say we're really excited about the partnership we've been building with our city council to really create this new Waterfront Development Authority. And I know the council president and I really recognize that we're talking about billions of dollars of public infrastructure investment that's needed. And if we believe we can rely on our general revenue fund budgets to get there, we are completely living in fantasy land. We need new tools, new financing mechanisms, and we have to think outside the box as a region to figure out how do we make the math work. That's why having the county as a partner is so important. That's why we're excited about the private support we've gotten from foundations, and we're looking forward to other discussions with other key private sector stakeholders. But we have to be creative as a region, because one of the biggest pain points I think we've seen for generations in Cleveland is, every administration at City Hall has their own set of priorities. And, from one mayor to the next, maybe the Lakefront's not a priority. And guess what happens? Nothing gets done. That's why having a public-private partnership organization whose main focus is to wake up every day focused on equitable lakefront development, really make sure we see shovels in the ground, not just more plans and PowerPoint presentations.
Right. So follow up to that, Mayor. If the North Coast Development Corporation, I should say, when the North Coast Development Corporation, which is a private nonprofit, gets set up, will you commit to requiring that your representatives, and Chris, this is a question for you too, that the representatives that you guys appoint to this thing will require their meetings and records to be open to the public and the press?
Yes.
I don't see why not. I think the only thing we always grapple with is real estate. And when we talk about complicated real estate, there's sometimes when you have to keep it close, but that's the only qualifier I'd make.
All right. Thank you. I'll be knocking on the door about that. Fantastic. Okay. A lightning round of questions. Tell us where you guys are on Burke right now, just quickly. Mayor first.
Well, I think I'm the first mayor in history to commission a study on how we can close Burke. Last year, we commissioned an operational study on what that would take. This year, we commissioned a study to look at what's the economic value of the asset. Once those two studies are done, we look forward to having a conversation with leadership in our administration and the FAA to talk about what could be potentially on the table for Burke.
Did you see that as a 5 to 10 year thing or a 0 to 5 year thing?
As soon as possible.
Okay.
When
Chris.
Stephen LaTourette was alive and was a congressman, he said, if there's a will, there's a way, and we'll help you find a way. Sadly, Steve passed, but he thought it was something that we could work together with Congress to decommission. After 9/11, the Congress went a different way and made it a little bit more difficult to decommission airports. But I follow home rule, so I follow my mayor on this. We want to be a support on the land use visions of the mayor. Two things I would say. We need more East Side public access, and this would help in that effort. I think that we put that out there in the Waterfront District Plan years ago, that we should have more park space on the water, particularly at Burke. But two other things. If there's going to be any aviation at all, I think that a small portion that's dedicated to actually education. I really love the Aerospace Maritime High School that's here, and Drew Ferguson's team showcased them in our State of the County. Having that learning opportunity about water and air and what those kids are learning now about drone travel and drone transportation, there's some interesting opportunity there. So I'll just say that as a plug for them, potentially out on the lake in the space. But park it up, create education opportunities. Let's put the freshwater institute out there.
I was looking at the 2004 plan.
Yes.
And you guys wanted to build a golf course.
We did, and I'll tell you why. I still subscribe to that, by the way. I'll tell you why. The FAA had 2 permitted uses: tree farms and golf courses post 9/11.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we actually took a Jeep ride with the PGA who said you could put a short course out here. I still subscribe to it. I played up on Lake Michigan the other day. Not a good golfer at all, but there's a market there, especially with the downtown residents. and
Okay.
neighborhood residents all around.
Brown Stadium, lakefront plan that you're developing and you're going to be talking about. What are you thinking about Brown Stadium right now?
We love to make sure that the Brown Stadium stays right here on the lakefront.
Follow the home rule status of a city in the state. No, hey, look, it's here. If we could rewrite history and put it somewhere else, perhaps we would have, but it's here. I always reference the 20-plus acres right behind it, the 100 acres in the surrounds around it. There's a lot to do around it if we do it right.
Okay, one last question before we break. Euclid Beach process. I know this is off the downtown lakefront, but it's a big deal for the city and the county because you both have plans that will connect in that region of city in the Collinwood neighborhood. Was the process fair in terms of dealing with the mobile home residents?
You know, again, I feel that there has been a process. Appreciate Councilman Zone and your new role out there and working the public process tirelessly. The extraordinary amount of resources that have been dedicated through Mendel Foundation for reload services is incredibly admirable, and there's an opportunity, I hope, to have a win-win to create more public access in the Collinwood neighborhood to the lake, as the mayor stated, and also create opportunities for more housing, especially for those who've been there.
And I'd say, I echo the county executive's points. I think the Western Reserve Land Conservancy has done a really good job of engaging residents. And I know that both Councilman Hairston and Councilman Polincic have really prioritized vocally the importance of East Side lakefront development. We're really excited about the investment from Mendel, and we want to make sure that those residents get their fair share of access to a world-class lakefront. That's our priority.
Fantastic. I think that's it for this segment. Yes? Thank you all, guys.